Blood, guts, and glory. During the Viking Age, people were brutally defeated and even more brutally killed. There are probably few things that are more controversial and mysterious than the blood eagle rite. There is a story that the Vikings were very cruel to their enemies. The blood eagle is one of the worst things you could do if you were being harmed by a Viking hunter. Cutting a person's ribs off at the back, pulling them out to make wings, and then leaving them to slowly die of suffocation was how it was done. Did this horrible rite really happen? If so, what was the point of it? Who were the people it hurt? There is no question that the blood eagle's history is dark and violent. It's a scary reminder of how wild and violent the Viking Age was and how far these fierce fighters were willing to go to beat their enemies and show their strength. What is the blood eagle? The blood eagle, which was also referred to as blotren in Old Norse, was a manner of execution that was documented in numerous written Viking histories that were written during the Middle Ages. The society of the Vikings was notorious for its lack of compassion. Their adversaries and anybody else who stood in their path were all eliminated by them. In contrast to the other methods of killing, this particular approach was superior than the others. At the outset, the victim was positioned in a prone position, which means that they were lying on their back. After that, a sharp instrument, similar to a long knife, was used to cut their rib cage away from their spine. The lungs of the victim, together with all of their ribs, were then pulled through the chest cavity, as described by the Scandinavian historians who wrote about the Vikings. The name of the ceremony comes from the fact that this formed a pair of wings. Additionally, it was said that the fluttering of the lungs was similar to the flapping of the wings of an eagle. A spectacle was supposed to have occurred during the execution. This was done for the gratification of the person carrying out the execution, as well as for the entertainment of the audience that would frequently come to observe. Taking everything into consideration, the blood eagle was a horrifying and terrible method of death. The only people who could receive it were those who were the most despised adversaries, or those who had committed a particularly horrible action.
Origins of the gruesome practice. As is frequently the case with Viking history, the precise origins of the blood eagle are a mystery and something that is not quite known. There is hardly much else that has been passed down to us through the sagas and stories other than information on the practice. Our sources were published many centuries after the events that took place, hence they are not now relevant. The narratives, despite this, provide some insight into the beginnings of the phenomenon. When it was first mentioned in medieval sagas, the ceremonial execution most likely began somewhere in the 9th century. After that, it became commonplace. In the event that it was created before, there is no record of it. Over the course of the 11th, 12th, and 13th centuries, numerous further stories of the form of torture are recorded. It would appear from this that the Vikings were the ones who adopted the practice. The origin of the practice, as well as the reasons for its inception, cannot be determined with absolute certainty. The blood eagle in Viking history. The sagas and other Latin histories are among the medieval books that contain accounts of blood eagle torture. Other medieval texts include the sagas. There are 9 reports from the Middle Ages that document the torturing and execution of many people by means of this rite. During the 11th, 12th, and 13th centuries, it is mentioned in 7 different prose narratives and 2 different poetic accounts written in Old Norse and Latin. During the course of the Orkney Inga saga, Halfdan Longleg, the son of Harald Fairhair, is put to death in a rite involving the blood eagle. There is still another Icelandic saga that tells the same story. It was a man by the name of Torf Einar who was responsible for carrying out the execution of Halfdan. However, the sagas do not provide a sufficient explanation for why he was murdered. There is a possibility that it was a punishment for a crime. On the other hand, there were academics who proposed that it was a type of human sacrifice, most likely to the god Odin. After being found guilty of murder, Halfdan Longleg was sentenced to the gruesome blood eagle as a kind of punishment. This is the most plausible explanation. The killing of a father or other male relative is of particular concern. An additional piece of evidence that lends credibility to the idea that this was the primary motive behind the use of such a gruesome punishment is the most well-known account of the blood eagle in Viking history. During the epic tale known as Ragnar's Sons, the infamous Ivar the Boneless is responsible for the murder of King Ella of Northumbria through the use of ritualistic torture. Ivar embarked on a journey from Scandinavia with the intention of eliminating Ella. He intended to extract vengeance for the death of his father, Ragnar Lodbrok, who had been murdered. It was with the assistance of the great heathen army, along with his brothers Bjorn Ironside and Ubba, that Ivar was able to triumph over King Ella and ultimately put him to death. As he opened his back, he dragged his lungs through the space that was stained with blood. The Gesta Danorum, written by Saxo Grammaticus, and the Orkneyinga saga both contain examples of this narrative being recounted. One, and only one Latin source for the blood eagle can be found here. It provides a description of how the individuals who carried out the rite commanded that the likeness of an eagle should be placed upon his back. During the time of the Vikings, there were just a few other people who also went through the blood eagle. Within the narrative of Norna Gest, Lingvi Hundingsson is put to death for the murder of Sigmund, and as a kind of penance, a bloody eagle is carved into his back. There is a high probability that this is yet another reference to the infamous and horrifying method of execution mentioned earlier. Did the Vikings really perform the blood eagle? There is a significant amount of disagreement among historians and academics over the veracity of the blood eagle ritual among these groups. There are many who claim that it was either a literary fabrication or a translation error. Some people believe that it was a true historical practice, but others disagree. This intriguing question has been the subject of recent research in the fields of anatomy and cultural studies. In the process of analyzing the human anatomy involved in the ceremony, the researchers discovered that the activity is physically feasible. It is plausible that the approach described in medieval textual records could have been carried out in its most comprehensive form. Having said that, it would have also resulted in the victim's death in a short amount of time. The extent to which the second part of the torture was excruciating is called into question as a result of this. Archaeological evidence reveals that the practice of mutilating the human body, which may have included executions that were violent, dramatic, and ritualized, was not only common throughout the Viking Age, but also extremely common. Accordingly, it is not unreasonable that the historical blood eagle could have been an extreme example of such activities, but it is also not impossible that it could have been an exception. It is impossible to be absolutely definite without more data that is conclusive, just like it is with history. On the other hand, it appears that every indication points to the fact that it was a very real punishment carried out by the Vikings. From the likes of Ivar and King Ella to Torf Einar and Halfdan Longleg, the blood eagle has been inextricably linked to the cruelty that characterized the Viking Age. It is expected to continue to captivate individuals for generations to come.